I'm Ethan Lyle, and this is the night I learned Hollow Pine Cemetery doesn't just bury the dead. It hunts the living. When I took the night shift with my friend Mara Whitlock, we thought we were just guarding graves. But the mist, the whispers, and the moving shadows had other plans. By the time we realized the cemetery was alive, it was already too late. The first night I walked into Hollow Pine Cemetery, the air felt heavier than anywhere I had ever been. The gates groaned when I pushed them open, and the metal was cold enough to sting my palms. A thin fog hugged the ground, making every gravestone look like it was floating. I had taken the night shift as a groundskeeper because no one else wanted it, and the pay was just good enough to ignore the warning signs. The endless silence, the smell of wet soil, the strange stories whispered around town. I told myself that fear was for people who didn't need money. I was different. I could handle it. My job was simple: dig, clean, and keep watch for vandals. The old caretaker, Mr. Howland, gave me a rusted lantern and told me to avoid the northern edge after dark. He said the ground there was unstable. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded, grabbed the shovel, and started working under the pale light of a full moon that looked too close to the earth. For a while, everything was quiet. The sound of the shovel biting into dirt became almost calming. But after midnight, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. The fog seemed to move on its own, rolling toward me even when the wind was still. Somewhere in the distance, I heard what sounded like humming, soft, drawn out, almost like someone singing through the ground. When I stopped to listen, it went silent. As I worked, my lantern flickered, and I thought I saw movement between the headstones. Just shadows, I told myself, probably trees swaying. But there were no trees near that part of the cemetery. The only thing standing there was a tall marble statue of an angel, its wings chipped and its face worn smooth by time. When I turned away to keep digging, I could have sworn the statue's head had shifted slightly in my direction. I tried not to think about it. I focused on the work, counting my shovel strokes, anything to ignore the feeling of eyes pressing against my back. The air grew colder, and a sharp metallic scent, like blood mixed with iron, crept into my nose. My lantern dimmed again, sputtering like it was suffocating. That's when I heard it clearly for the first time. Breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. It came from behind a nearby tomb. I froze. My heartbeat filled my ears. The breathing grew louder, closer, until I could almost feel it brushing against my neck. When I spun around, there was nothing there. Just graves stretching into the mist. The fog parted for a moment, and I thought I saw footprints, bare, wet, and leading away from where I stood. They stopped in front of the angel statue. The statue was facing me now. Its hands, once folded in prayer, were pressed together in a strange gesture I didn't recognize. My lantern gave one final flicker before dying completely. For a brief second, everything was swallowed by darkness. When the light returned, faint and trembling, the footprints were gone. But next to the angel's feet, carved fresh into the stone, was a single word that hadn't been there before: my name. The next morning, I woke with a tight knot in my stomach and a headache that felt like someone was hammering my skull. The sunrise did nothing to ease the heaviness of the night before. I tried to convince myself it had all been imagination, the product of too many late nights and too much coffee. Still, a gnawing fear pulled me back to the cemetery. Something about that place felt alive, like it had been waiting for me to arrive. When I got there, the fog had lifted, but the ground was damp and uneven, as though someone had walked or crawled through it while I was gone. I moved toward the graves I had worked on the night before, trying to shake off the lingering unease. That's when I noticed it. One grave, freshly dug the week prior, had been disturbed. The dirt was turned over in a way that suggested it had been clawed from the inside, not dug with a shovel. I stopped a few feet away, my heart pounding. The coffin was still inside, but the lid was cracked open, splintered at the edges. I stepped closer, compelled by a mixture of fear and curiosity I couldn't explain. The air smelled of damp earth and something metallic. Blood, maybe, or rust. I knelt down to peer inside, my hands trembling despite my attempts to steady them. The inside was empty, except for an old, tattered blanket that had once been neatly folded. Deep, jagged scratch marks marred the wood as if something had fought to get out. My stomach churned. I could not tell if whatever had been in that coffin was alive or dead, or if it had even been human. I backed away, telling myself I should call someone, call the police even, but my phone had died overnight. Dead batteries, no signal, nothing. The rest of the day passed in a fog of unease. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see movement among the graves, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched never left me. By evening, the sky had darkened, and the wind picked up, carrying a low, groaning sound across the cemetery. It felt like the ground itself was moaning. I tried to leave early, but the gates seemed farther than they had in the morning. My legs felt heavy, my body sluggish, and the faint humming from the night before returned, louder now, vibrating through my bones. I stayed close to the caretaker's shed, hoping someone would come or that I would at least feel some sense of normalcy. That's when I saw it. A gravestone that hadn't been there before. I froze. The name engraved on it sent a shock straight through my chest. Ethan Lyle. My name. I stumbled backward, barely keeping myself from falling, staring at the letters carved deep into the stone. My reflection in the polished surface of the headstone was pale, eyes wide with panic. I couldn't understand it. I had never seen this grave before, never touched it. And yet here it was, my name, as if the cemetery had claimed me before I even knew it. The wind rose suddenly, and I felt cold fingers brush against my neck. I spun around, but the cemetery was empty. Only the fog lingered, curling like smoke among the headstones. And then, in the distance, a lantern flickered, bobbing between the graves, moving toward me with deliberate, unrelenting patience. It wasn't lit by fire, yet it glowed, warm and sinister, casting shadows that seemed to reach for me. And I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever had left my name on that stone was coming for me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of my name carved into that cold stone replayed in my mind. I kept thinking about the coffin I had seen the day before, the one with the claw marks inside. Something had been alive in there, something that didn't belong in the world above. My heart raced at the thought, and I knew I had to go back. I had to know what was happening, even if it meant facing whatever haunted Hollow Pine Cemetery. By the time I returned, the fog had thickened, wrapping the cemetery in a suffocating blanket. The air smelled damp and metallic, stronger than the day before. I gripped my shovel like a lifeline, trying to steady my shaking hands. The ground was uneven, the graves casting long shadows under the sickly moonlight. I moved slowly, listening to the crunch of dirt under my boots, trying to ignore the feeling that someone, or something, was following me. It started with whispers. At first, they were faint, like wind rustling through the trees, almost impossible to distinguish from the natural sounds of the night. But as I moved deeper into the cemetery, the whispers grew louder, forming words I couldn't understand. They seemed to come from beneath the ground, low and guttural, vibrating through the soles of my feet. I froze, listening, my breath catching in my throat. I tried to leave, telling myself to run, but every path I took twisted back on itself. The headstones seemed to shift, rearranging themselves, so that the same graves appeared no matter which way I turned. Panic clawed at my chest. The ground beneath my feet began to feel like it was pulsing, subtle at first, then stronger, as though something buried deep beneath the cemetery was stirring awake. Then I saw it. A new gravestone, freshly lowered, its edges still rough and dark with wet soil. My stomach turned as I approached. The name carved into it made my blood run cold. Mr. Howland. The caretaker who had given me this job, who had warned me to stay away from the northern edge, had been buried hours before, though I hadn't even noticed he was gone. A lantern hovered above the grave, swinging gently, as though held by invisible hands. Its glow cast long, flickering shadows that seemed to reach for me. I wanted to look away, to escape, but my body moved toward it on its own. The whispers beneath the ground intensified, forming a low chorus that pressed against my skull. I felt as though the cemetery itself was breathing, alive and aware of my presence. The lantern drifted slowly between graves, leading me toward the oldest section of hollow pine, where the tombstones were cracked and toppled, and the soil looked black and unnatural. Each step I took felt heavier, as if the earth were pulling me down. My chest tightened, and I realized that I had been walking in a trance, guided by something I could not see. At the far edge of the cemetery, I noticed a small stone door built into the hillside, something I had never seen before. The lantern stopped in front of it and went out. I stood there frozen, staring at the dark opening. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, and I realized I had no choice. Something was waiting inside, and it wanted me to follow. The whispers beneath the ground rose to a deafening hum, and the earth itself seemed to shift beneath my feet as I reached for the door. I forced the stone door open, and a rush of stale, cold air hit me like a wall. It smelled of rot and damp earth, thick and suffocating, and I had to step back to catch my breath. My lantern was useless. It had burned out completely, and the flashlight in my pocket barely pierced the darkness, leaving long, twisting shadows that seemed to move on their own. The chamber inside was small but deep, carved into the hillside, lined with rows of old, broken coffins stacked haphazardly like shelves. Dust and cobwebs covered everything, and the air felt heavy, pressing down on my chest with every shallow breath. I moved slowly, my shoes crunching against gravel and splintered wood. Each coffin I passed seemed to pulse under my touch, subtle vibrations that made my skin prickle. Some of the lids had been pried open, others smashed completely. When I knelt to peer into one, I saw a thin, pale hand, long fingers curled into a clawing grip, reaching up as if trying to drag something out. I stumbled back, gagging at the smell, and tried to tell myself it was just a trick of the shadows. As I moved deeper into the chamber, I noticed something strange. Dozens of small nameplates lying on the floor, stacked like discarded books. Each one had a name engraved with dates, but the dates were in the future. My stomach turned as I picked one up, and my eyes froze on the letters. Ethan Lyle, 2025. My name, my date of death, etched into the cold metal. The realization hit me like a hammer. Whatever had been calling me to this place had already decided my fate. A sudden shift in the air made me spin around. The stone door had slammed shut behind me, though I hadn't felt a breeze or heard a mechanism. The room went completely silent for a moment, except for the faint scratching sound coming from the far corner. My heart raced, and my flashlight trembled in my grip as I focused on the noise. Something was moving among the coffins. Slow, deliberate. A dragging, scraping sound as if someone, or something, was shuffling along the floor. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to make myself small, hoping whatever it was would pass. But the sound circled me, closer and closer, each scrape punctuated by a whispering that made my blood run cold. It called my name over and over, low and familiar, but wrong, distorted, hollow, like it was coming from under the earth rather than from a living voice. I could feel the vibration in the floor now, a steady thrum like a heartbeat beneath the coffins. My hands shook as I tried to find a way out, but the walls were solid stone, unyielding. Panic clawed at my mind, a deep, gnawing terror I couldn't escape. I stumbled forward, and the flashlight caught something I couldn't unsee. The coffin lids on the shelves weren't empty. Faces stared back at me, pale and gaunt, eyes wide with silent screams, pressed against the wood like they were trying to escape. I fell to my knees, gasping, and the whispers rose into a chorus. The vibration under the floor became stronger, shaking dust from the ceiling. My heart thumped in my chest, but it wasn't my heartbeat I could feel. It was the earth's. Something alive was buried beneath me, and it was awakening. As the chorus of whispers swelled, the floor beneath me shifted slightly, a subtle crack forming in the stone. My breath caught as I realized the chamber itself was moving, reshaping, folding inward like the cemetery above was alive and intent on swallowing me whole. And in that moment, I understood the truth. Hollow Pine Cemetery didn't just bury the dead. It chose its living victims, too, and I was next. I don't know how long I've been trapped in this chamber. Time has no meaning down here. Hours feel like days, and minutes stretch into unbearable eternities. The flashlight in my hand flickers weakly, casting trembling shadows across the broken coffins and scattered nameplates. I can feel the weight of the earth pressing down on me, as though the cemetery itself is aware of my presence, breathing through the walls and shifting beneath my feet. Every sound, the scratching, the low hum, the distant whispering, feels amplified, crawling into my skull and refusing to leave. I tried to climb, to dig my way out, but the stone walls are smooth, unyielding, and the soil above is thick and unbroken. Every strike of my shovel against the ground only seems to feed the vibrations beneath me, as though I am pounding rhythm into the heart of something ancient and awake. The whispers beneath the coffins have grown louder, forming words that I can almost understand. They are chanting my name over and over, a chorus of voices that sound both familiar and wrong. I know these voices. They belong to the dead of Hollow Pine, calling me to join them. I've stopped trying to fight. The exhaustion has left my body trembling, my mind fraying at the edges. I sit against the wall and try to breathe, but the air tastes thick and rotten, clinging to my throat. That's when I hear it, a steady heartbeat beneath the floor. It's not mine. It's coming from the earth itself, slow and deliberate, pulsing through the stone, through the dirt, through me. I lean over and shine my light on the floor, and the beam catches something moving beneath the soil. At first, I see nothing but shadows, but then shapes begin to rise, faces pressed against the dirt, pale and twisted, mouths opening in silent screams. Hundreds of them, writhing as though the ground is trying to vomit them up. Their eyes meet mine, wide and empty, filled with hunger and despair. They are reaching for me, not with hands, but with the weight of their presence, their longing to pull me into the earth with them. I stumble back, my mind screaming, and the floor beneath me shifts again. The heartbeat grows louder, more insistent, and the dirt begins to crack and crumble. Roots snake out from the walls, twisting and curling like grasping fingers. The whispers coalesce into one phrase, repeated endlessly, echoing in my head. Welcome home. Welcome home. I realize then that I am not a visitor. Hollow Pine Cemetery doesn't just contain the dead, it collects them, and it has already claimed me. The walls, the floor, the very earth beneath my feet are alive with those who came before, and they are waiting to add me to their number. I try to crawl to escape, but the chamber seems infinite, extending far beyond what my eyes can see. The faces beneath the dirt writhe, their whispers rising into a deafening chorus. The heartbeat quickens, pounding through the stone, through my bones, and I understand that the cemetery itself is readying its next breath, ready to swallow me whole. And then, just as I feel the ground begin to split beneath me, I see it. A pair of eyes staring from the far corner of the chamber. They are not human, not entirely. They are dark, hollow, and infinite, reflecting every fear I have ever held. They look directly at me, and in that gaze, I understand the horrifying truth. I am not escaping. Hollow Pine Cemetery is not finished with me. and it will never let me go. The light flickers one final time, and the earth moves to claim me. The whispering swells, the heartbeat pounds, and I disappear into the soil, swallowed by the cemetery that lives and breathes beneath the mist. And somewhere, far above, the gates of Hollow Pine stand silent, waiting for the next visitor.